When kids are struggling, if you tell them they're perfect and they're amazing and there's nothing wrong with them, that creates this huge disconnect for them. Because sometimes I don't need someone to say, you're great, you got this, right? Sometimes I just want someone to sit with me and say, I know you're scared, right? And no one, and I never had that when I was a kid.
My name is Ashanti, and welcome to the Taking Off the Mask podcast, where men get real. Men of all ages and backgrounds come to this space to own and discuss how they present themselves to the world. In our work, the front of the mask are the things that we gladly let people see, that we gladly let the world see about ourselves. And the back of the mask are the things that we don't talk much about. Maybe ask yourself right now, what mask are you wearing? What are the things that you're gladly talking about on a regular basis? And what are the things that you are pretty much not talking a lot about? What are you avoiding? What courageous conversations are you not having? Sharing his mask today is Donovan Hall. He's also known as Donofriend. Now, listen, there's a lot in this conversation. This is a good one for folks who are loving education or passionate about education or have an interest in what's happening in education. Donovan and I met several years ago. He was in the early stages of his building up his speaking business. Let me tell you what he writes in his bio. He says, I'm a youth empowerment and development advocate. I do speaking, coaching, content creation, and I'm working on creating my first docuseries about youth in America. He's been on Good Morning America. He has been doing amazing work, and I'm so proud of him. I'm so proud to know him. You'll hear us talk about a workshop that he attended with me, helping me out because it was a big school. It was a big workshop for a wellness week, and he came to support. And in this conversation, he shares that was a monumental moment for him. For me, it was great having some help, but I didn't know that it was doing for him what it did for him. As you hear in these conversations, we talk about educators, schools, the challenges we see in our schools, the challenges we see today in our schools more than ever, where schools and people in power of schools are saying there are certain things our kids should not learn. Not only should we not teach them, we won't even make them available to them to learn on their own. Now, knowing that a library is not where most kids spend their time, but it is a free resource for schools. They're taking books out of schools because they feel that they are against the vision of these politicians. And our education is starting to be under attack. If you haven't seen it, it is. If you haven't been paying attention, please do. And if you don't know, please listen. This conversation is going to be two educators talking about this important work. We are now working on the outside of schools coming in. And that work sometimes feels challenging. It feels daunting. It feels almost sometimes like, is it working? I know it is. I know the feeling of is it working is sometimes wanting to find the right educators in the building who say this work is important. It's critical to our kids and our students and our youth well-being. And we know it's as important as the academics. But what we know that most schools have decided that academics are everything and the other stuff, well, you'll deal with it when you're 40. Because best believe that a lot of the things that schools are not giving young people chance and space to deal with, they're going to get dealt with. The question is when. The question is it going to be dealt with now when you're 12 or 14 or 16 or 18, when it's a small dose of what's going on in your life? Or is it going to get dealt with when you're an adult in a corporate position because now you have not able to make it through whatever you're going through? I think it's dangerous for us as a community, as a society, to continue believing that our young people don't see it. They're not paying attention. It's a new day. People are learning that it's a new day. They're learning that no longer will we tolerate, will we accept that you get to dictate all the things that you want to dictate. When I'm talking about you, I'm talking about parents are experiencing that with their kids. Kids are having thoughts, opinions, feelings. And we see it all over the world in these workaround masks. I am excited about this conversation. Listen, not only, as you can already tell, I'm really passionate about this conversation. This is our 3rd anniversary episode 152. So if you've been listening to us for any time, maybe you're a new subscriber to this podcast, thank you. We couldn't do it without you. And as we move into this next season, of talking to more educators and more administrators and more people who are focused on transformation of young people's lives. I hope that you will continue to be a part of it with us. Hope you will continue to grow with us and learn with us and have these conversations with us where we make space for men and boys of all backgrounds from all over the world to talk about what's happening behind this mask. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Donovan Hall, Donofriend, and I hope as you hear the passion in his words, you will see the work that he's doing to transform lives for our young people, transform schools for all the parties involved. And I hope that as we move into the third year of this podcast, that you will continue telling someone about it. If you haven't yet given us a rating, please do it. If you haven't told somebody about it, please do it. Like, help get the word out. But if nothing else, celebrate with us this third year anniversary episode with a former educator, fellow educator, speaker, and a person transforming schools from the outside in, Donovan Hall, our friend, also known as Donofriend. You will also be able to make your mask anonymously if you want at millionmask.org. Donovan and I are going to share our mask here publicly, but you can do it anonymously. And stay tuned for the global launch of the Million Mask movement. It is the movement is growing, and if you haven't heard yet, stay tuned to next week. You'll hear a big announcement, and we look forward to you being a part of this journey with us. Take care. Bye now. Donovan Taylor Hall, welcome to the Taking Off the Mask podcast.
My friend, thank you so much for having me. I am super excited to be here. It's been so long.
It has been. It has been. I was just thinking about our time at that school, Lowell, in San Francisco, and what a powerful experience that was. Thank you I'm so glad you were there with us. And how about this? What do you want folks to know about you before we jump into these masks? Tell them who you are.
Sure. My name is Donovan Taylor Hall, but I go by Donofriend when it comes to my work. That's what the kids call me, and that's what the Donofriends call me in the Donofriend world. I'm a youth advocate. I'm an educator, storyteller, content creator, 16 different things, but it's all dedicated to youth development and youth empowerment. And I am super excited to be here because I told you this a while ago, but I think maybe a month before you and I started talking, I had kind of reached out to some people into the bigger power than me, saying like, I need some guidance. And then you came along, and seeing you at that school was like, when I came to work with you at that school and watch you present with those kids, was exactly the push I needed to get me pursuing this career. And all these years later, I get to like talk to you about it. So I'm really excited to be here.
Oh man. Thank you.
Yeah.
I've been cheering you on. I've been like, every time I see you taking your picture with the audience behind you, people are screaming and cheering. I'm like, yes, that's what's up. Oh man.
But you really inspired me. I had been doing this work for a while, but I was starting to feel a little bit anxious about, will young people be responsive to this work? Will young people care about this? And seeing the reactions that they had to you and to that presentation, and how open and vulnerable and respectful they were, it was just all the validation that I needed that this work is very important to young people, and it just matters like who it comes from.
Thank you, man. I want to. Part of my soul right now wants to change the subject, like right, just because I am. But I'm also, my mentor is helping me realize when I don't slow down and just thank people for just the words, right? Like I want to run from it because sometimes I don't think I deserve it.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, appreciating you for the words, and in the work, I'm constantly working on myself, right? So I'm constantly like, okay, I really want to like, let's move on to the next thing, right? but I do want to take it, and I want to appreciate it, and have gratitude for you for sharing it.
I don't say what I don't mean, right? I'm very big on that. I don't have the energy to say what I don't mean, so I very much mean it and very much appreciate you for it.
That was an unforgettable moment. I mean, that moment there kicked off so many other things. And then even as just seeing what happens when schools talk good talk, but don't walk that talk, right? I think it was at that school where the teachers was like, we're not bringing our kids because we got some studying to do.
Yeah,
It's
I remember
it's a
that.
wellness workshop, and you have teachers who have the permission to opt out. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how is that wellness? How is that showing wellness is a priority for the school when an individual teacher can say, "Oh no, my class, this material is too important." And I think that is what we see. I see at schools in a lot of places, sadly, and I think teachers should have autonomy to make some decisions. But I'm sure this wasn't just planned yesterday. This was
Yeah.
on the calendar. It's posters all around your school. It's Wellness Week,
Yeah. It's a
and
week. Yeah.
and you and you didn't even decide that, what, let's focus on some wellness. So I think and now as you're visiting schools, I imagine you're seeing so many different things as well. Like, and I believe that we have work to do not only to make schools safer, better, and more healthy for teachers and students, but we have some systemic things that we need to work on. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I spent, I don't know, maybe 10 years before I was even had any kind of credibility outside of the classroom, trying to figure out how to really summarize why this work is important. Because it's interesting now that I've gotten attention and I've had opportunities to really share my work on a bigger scale. I had teachers tell me all the time, like, you're not a real teacher. This is like kind of secondary work. It's not important. But what I was trying to explain to them is like how kids feel determines how they show up, right? And so if we're not tending to young people and how they feel, they're not allowed to show up in the learning and their full selves. And if you're creating systems that are undercutting how young people feel about themselves, then that directly impacts how they show up in the classroom, whether it's from overachieving and pressing themselves too much, or whether it's from becoming disenchanted from learning because the experience feels so negative and feels so disconnected. So that's like my kind of mission statement is, or my why, right? Is how kids feel about themselves determines how they show up. So I can't even talk to them about any of the educational stuff until they feel good. Learning should be about growth. It shouldn't have to be about validation and safety. It should be more about how can I expand? To ask someone to learn and to grow is an ultimate act of vulnerability.
I tell teachers when we do this work, it's like, look, if you tell a kid to go up and answer a question at the board, you may think you're doing some kind of pedagogical experience to give that child a chance to learn in front of the room. But you also could be pushing that student into the danger zone of first, the vulnerability of being in front of people, of stage fright, of all the layers of what can happen when maybe you're prepared or not prepared, making a mistake, what your meaning of failing is in front of people, and all the different things. Now, I used to do it to students. I used to tell kids to go to the board, and every once in a while, a kid would be arguing back with me. No, I'm not going. I'm like, yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. Yeah, of course you're going. Of course you're going. Right. And I realized as I look back to some of those days, I'm like, oh, in my mind, I wasn't trying to hurt the student. In my mind, I was trying to create a lesson that was engaging and had people participating and giving people opportunities to participate who don't usually participate. But I missed the possibility that I was actually putting people into a place of such vulnerability that it was unhealthy for them, that it was unsafe for them.
I tell I don't even know if I should tell it on this one, but I tell a story about that in one of the keynotes that I do with young people because I witnessed it. I witnessed how unsafe a young person felt when they were asked to go up and to show that they knew the answers when that person was very much in the learning phase. They were not ready to perform. And so a big part of my teaching was about we're learning and there is no, I have to be right. I have to look good, because in learning, the base is that you don't know, right? That's the whole thing. So I even had a thing where I kept a bell in my classroom and I would ring it when kids would teach me something just to normalize that we don't know everything and it's okay to ask and learn and to celebrate that. But, we often come up against, if you have one teacher that does, that's great. But then you also have all the other years where maybe you didn't have that, or you had a teacher that shamed or made you feel ashamed or embarrassed you in front of people. So it's tough to kind of even help shift that mindset, even if you have a wonderful teacher for a year that kind of works with you around that. So that's a big part of my kind of work, not just around academics, but also learning as a person,
Yeah. Well, I on this podcast, I've talked to several teachers. I love talking to teachers in this work because I think, and we talk to men because I think that I didn't get an opportunity to share what I was feeling growing up. My mom, I'll tell you what you're going to feel. You know what I'm saying? Like there was a lot of rules in my house around, and my mom had less of the rules about feelings than the streets of Oakland, because Oakland had clear streets rules about what it meant to be a man, and you don't get to show feelings. But in the house, we weren't discussing emotional intelligence. You know, my mom she was talented. She was teacher. I love her. I think she loved me. And I think, but I know that there were certain lessons that didn't happen there. What I've realized on the outside of home was that I was navigating a world that she had no idea about. Like no one ever came up to my mom and took her bike.
Mm-hmm,
You know what I'm saying?
mm-hmm.
Like, so when I came home without my bike that time, it was like, she's like, where's that bike? And I'm like, well, let me try and explain. And she wanted to hear it. She's like, you better go back and get that bike. And I'm like, I didn't give it away. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I had some skills, you know, you taught me how to cook and clean and wash clothes and fold dishes, or wash dishes and fold clothes. You taught me how to do all that stuff. That didn't work with the guy who told me to give me my bike. You know, there was nothing. He wasn't asking for me to do some chores for him to keep my bike in my possession.
Yeah.
There was no, I don't know how to protect myself. I don't know how to fight. I don't know, you know. And I think she did the best she could. But I think ultimately, what happens when kids come to school and they're trying to navigate a world that they've never experienced, never seen, and don't really know how to navigate in a healthy way, you know?
It's interesting because I was just talking to two of my adult friends about that, who are really struggling around trusting people's boundaries and listening, and they were directly connecting it to their experience with their parents and what they taught them, and how that kind of impacts them now to this day. So I work with a lot of kids, but I also do this work with adults, and sometimes people are kind of confused. But in reality, it's just human work. You know, it's work that can be done at any age. My whole thing was like, what did I need to learn? And then how can I teach this to kids at an age that it can be more proactive so they can take better care of themselves? But it's hard when you're teaching young people these emotionally vulnerable skills and these things about taking care of themselves. And then you have parents or adults who don't know how to hold space for those skills, because the way that they grew up and how they survived was very different, especially working with Black and brown kids and Black and brown boys, you know?
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm super excited for us to jump into this mask. I think I told you before we started, we'd already started, and I was like, we should have recorded all the pre stuff, but I think there's no shortage of stuff for us to talk about. Now, since you're the guest, you get to decide who goes first. Either you go first or I go first, but it's up to you. You get to choose.
I love learning from you. I love following you, and I don't feel that way about a lot of people. So I would love for you to go first.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So today, right now, it's hot here. I'm in the Bay Area, but the heat's been turned up a little bit today. And so today's mask looks like this. And the words that I use for today are funny, serious, and dedicated. And I think that funny and serious being together are sometimes complicated, because I love to laugh. I love to have fun. I love to be in good energy and spirits and good spaces. And sometimes, like, I have to like be clear over the funny. I have to like, I'm not really smiling all the time. I'm like, and I think sometimes trying to be clear, serious, direct in a way that doesn't seem threatening to people. I mean, I'm 6'1". I'm 300 plus pounds. I have a big feet. I have a big presence. And I speak sometimes with like really good, with clarity, or like with expectation of what I think is clear from my end. But sometimes if I'm not clear, if I'm trying to be too lighthearted, the fact that I'm talking about something serious is not really heard. And so it's like, I'll be saying it 3, 4, 5 times. And I'm like, I've been talking about this for a long time. And then I realize, because I'm trying to keep the kindness and I'm trying to be like so kind, I'm not being clear. And I think that sometimes I try and turn to the serious, and I'm trying to find the balance between being able to be kind, clear, direct, serious, like, and have a mix between that, right? Because sometimes I feel like I'm in one or the other. Like, if I'm trying to laugh and be funny, it's not being taken serious. And when I'm like, get this done, then I'm like being too aggressive. And so then I'm kind of dancing back and forth. But those are the things that I try and show, and I'm always trying to find the dance between those. And I think the last thing I'll say about the front is, and maybe this is probably more toward the back, so I'll wait for that one. But I'll say dedicated is like, we're about to hit 20-year anniversary in this work, Ever Forward, right? I have a hard time believing it, and the fact that like I've been committed to it, and it hasn't been easy this 20 years. But I think as I look back, I'm like, oh, I see all the moments that I was like about to run and go get a job, about to run and go sign up for apply for this position that I could do, right? And knowing that I don't think it would have made me happier. It would have filled my pocket more.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have really filled my soul more. And so I'm dedicated to trying to go into the end until there's something that says you have to stop this, but until then I get to live out this dream. So that's the front of my mask.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. I was like biting my tongue because I want to jump in and be like, oh, yes.
Oh, you can say anything. It's a conversation. It's no interview, right? So
I didn't know. I was like, it's just jumping on it. I think that it's interesting. One of the things I think is really important about talking with young people is that it's very often that we feel like our experiences are so unique to us and isolated to us. And because I've kind of carved my own path with my work, I often feel that way. And just from listening to you talk, it's like, not only do I feel like this is a very valid thing I'm feeling, but it also kind of gave me access to another word that I don't use enough for myself. I started thinking after you finished, I was like, if I use the word committed, where would it go? On which side would it be? So I just appreciate, I think that's why it's powerful to be vulnerable and to speak that, especially with young people, because if you can't articulate how you're feeling, a lot of times it gets kind of muddled and it gets confused, and it sometimes, young people will turn it against themselves, and it becomes more about suffering than understanding.
All the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Well, you get to do the front now.
Okay, one more thing. Congratulations. 20 years.
Oh, right on.
20 years. Yeah. I struggle a lot. I'm trying to figure this out. I struggle a lot with finishing things, and I'm learning a lot around my expectations of myself and how I try to do too much. And so because I try to do so much, it's impossible for me to really finish the things I really want to start. And I was listening to Grit by Angela Duckworth. And I was like, well, I need this book because I don't have grit. I can't finish anything. And I was listening to it and I was like, bro, I have pursued this career since I started working with kids and have never backed down from it. And so it kind of changed my idea of what grit was, because I found something that I've been pursuing for so long. And just like you said, it would be easy to go get I don't know, in this market, it would be easy to get a job that pays well or pays better. But it's like this, there's no question in my mind that this is what I got to do,
Yeah. Ooh-wee. Well, thank you for that. And I think that part about grit is like when you look back, you look at all the steps that you took along the way and all the things that were either trying to test. I consider all the things that are the barriers and the things that are failures or tests, right?
Yes. Yep.
How bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? How bad do you want this? Do you want this really bad? Do you want to quit and give it up? I had a friend who was a pastor, and he said, Ashanti, look, if you don't want to do this anymore, give it up. Right? Give it up and go back and do something else. And I was like, oh, wait, I could always just make that choice.
Yeah.
But sometimes it feels like you can't make that choice. But I think I'm not ready to make that choice. I'm not ready to throw in the towel yet.
Yeah.
And I think like, oh, I'm not stuck. I'm making a choice that is hard.
Yeah.
If it was easy, somebody would have already fixed the problem, right?
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about, man. That's what I'm saying. I literally say that all the time. It became like an act of self-compassion for me to start saying I can quit at any time that I want. I just started saying it because I was like, yo, like I'm not being forced into this. It's hard and it's difficult. And if I wanted to quit, I know I want to work with elephants. I've been saying that a lot recently. I'm like, let me get some TV shows and some books and some speeches out, and then I'm going to go work with elephants. That's like my dream right now. But at any point, I would post TikTok videos and people are like, you're born for this. You're meant for this. And I would just be like, no, I'm not. I chose it. Like I hear what you're saying, but I have to remind myself, because otherwise it becomes this big weight of like, I have to do this. But when I recognize that I'm choosing to do it, even when it's hard, not only is that empowering for me, it also helps me celebrate myself a little bit to say like, yeah, you could have quit a long time ago, but it's my choice. And I choose to show up for this work every day. This is my grit board. This behind me is, it's all pictures of kids I've worked with since I was 19. And that's when I look at it and say, when things feel really hard, it's like, I choose to show up, and this is my proof. That's the proof right there that I chose this work. I choose this work every single day, even when it gets tough. And just knowing that I have the choice to say I could quit if I wanted to, just helps me feel better. It kind of puts the power back in my hands, and I need to feel that power so I can utilize it, you know?
Yeah. I'd like that. I think like the reframing of that, right? Like the idea of our own uniqueness, but also like, yes, this is what I feel like I was put here for.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm not careful, I wear that as a cloak of responsibility, not as a cloak of honor, right?
Oh my God.
As a cloak of like, I have the honor to serve in this work, as opposed to this is all I can do.
Yes.
And all I'm supposed to do, right? I think that reframing is so beautiful. So thank you for that.
I would be a great car salesperson. I know. I used to sell the knives. I was really good at selling knives to people. And then I was looking around. I remember I went into my friend's house after like 2 months of being really good at selling knives. And I was asking them about their family's knives. And then I just thought, I don't care about this. I'm not doing this. And I quit that day. Like literally, I went back to my job. And I was like, nah, I'm good. I don't care about this. Like, I don't want to do this. I can't. I'm so sorry. But I've never felt that way with the kids. You know, I've never felt that way.
All right. We're fully in, and now we're going to go front. You ready for the front?
Yeah, and this is so interesting. I've been working on this thing, and it's kind of connected to the mask that I've been wearing since I was a kid, which is so I have to kind of try to not bring up the back too much. But this idea that I have to be good all the time. I have on my social media, and now that I'm going to schools and I'm online, I don't like having the kids call me Mr. Donovan. So they call me Donofriend. And the idea is like Donofriend is your friend. But recently I realized like I used to be Donofriend. I used to kind of act on Donofriend in my personal life. And when it shifted to my professional life, I didn't have the energy to be that anymore. And I'm in this moment in my life right now where I'm struggling to find the balance, because Donofriend, which is this front side, which says, I drew the words on it. It says caring, goofy, and charismatic. And that's Donofriend, right? That's how I think my kids would describe me. I think they would say like Riz instead of charismatic, because that's the new thing. But just that's the face that I wear all the time. And it was the face that I wore as a young person to kind of collect relationships and safety, because I was always so afraid of being alone, because at the core of it, you know, we'll get to that later, but at the core of it, there was so much loneliness. And so when I think about myself, this is who I feel like I should be. And in order to kind of win these people over, and it's tough, you know, duality is a real thing. And I understand that humor and communication and kindness and caring can be really, really helpful in building relationships with people. And building relationships is key to then doing the work. I also understand right now, since I left the classroom almost 3 years ago to pursue this bigger dream, I left the kids. And so I can't force myself to wear the mask from my home office. I can't force myself to be caring and goofy and charismatic on camera when I'm not talking to kids. And so when I started sharing TikTok and stuff, the reason that my TikToks blew up was because they were seeing these really caring moments. But I stopped liking my content, and I started struggling with my content because I wasn't having fun. I wasn't getting to show my humor and my personality. And that's really what Donofriend stands for. So these people will be like, oh, you're this really caring and calm and kind and gentle person with kids. And I'm like, 7% of the time I'm like that, right? That's like very intimate, small moments. But it's interesting looking at these words I wrote and feeling how disconnected I felt from Donofriend recently, and that I don't feel like I'm getting to show these parts of that. And so I don't really know what to do with that yet. I'm still kind of processing it and figuring it out. I was beating myself up for, months, thinking I'm not motivated enough, I'm not disciplined enough. But as soon as I stepped foot in a classroom, I went to a school for the first time in 2 years, and I was like, on immediately. There was no turning it on. As soon the first kid walked up, and I was like, hey, and I had no issue turning it on. And so what I realized is that Donofriend and this mask really, it's not something I can just put on by myself. It really needs to be something that is brought out of me with people. And working from a home office by myself there are no people. I gotta look at myself all the time, and that is not fun. Not fun. I can't be charismatic with myself. Like, what? You know what I mean? It doesn't work. And I'm goofy by myself is also weird,
Well, I think that your ability to like when I watch your videos, I can hear and hear students like really begin like how you help them to pull out of themselves what they have learned and how much they've grown, especially the ones that you talk to who either you used to teach or you reflect back to them when they were growing. And as they were looking back at their ability to grow, I've watched you just in those moments of like listening, hearing, reflecting back, listening, hearing, reflecting back. And I think that that's so critical to what education needs. I don't think that those skills are on most teaching job description lists, right? Like, do you know the pedagogy? Do you know the class management? Do you have all this stuff? And I think that sometimes people come in like, yes, I've studied all the books about class management, and they have no relationships. And they wonder why they are struggling. And they're struggling because school teaching is hard and it's complex and and if you are not building relationships, you are like Charlie Brown's teacher. You're just making sounds.
Yes.
Yeah. You know?
I mean, at one of the schools that I was at, because I did these programs where I go for a week, and I'm so lucky that these schools were like, yeah, this sounds wonderful, because I was concerned about my ability to connect with young people and to teach them this stuff without getting to know them first, because I didn't want to be just another person coming in and just being like, here's what you need to do. Is like my work specifically with how I work. There has to be buy-in, and the buy-in comes from care and concern and laughing and having fun. So I had these schools who let me come for a week, and I didn't do my presentation for the kids until Friday. Like I was there from Monday till Thursday, going into classes, eating lunch with them, playing games, like getting to know them, spending time with every sort of kid at that school. And on Friday, one of these kids came up to me and he was like, look, can I tell you something? And I was like, what's up? And he said, I don't care what it is that you're about to teach, I'm in. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, yeah, I'm in. Whatever you want to teach, I believe it. I'm into it. Just because he had such a great experience getting to know me. And it's not like I got to like trick him into believing it, but it was suddenly like, I want to learn from this person. And Donofriend, the whole idea behind it is I want to be a like truly public teacher. I want to be a teacher that kids choose to learn from, because I think we forget what it feels like to be told what to do and learn, especially if you're not connecting with it. And so much of my work, even around offering things to young people instead of telling, right, is about influence versus manipulation. And so I've cultivated this Donofriend mask in a really organic and natural way. And I feel so lucky to be connected to it. But as we talk about with this situation, there's always two sides of it. And what I find right now, because I'm by myself, I don't have a team, I don't have a partner, like it is just me. And I have so much support, but there's a difference between support and love and a team or a partner. You know what I mean? Like I'll like say, here are my 6 issues I have. And someone's like, well, I believe in you. And I'm like, great. Like, thanks so much. I could use some actual like support in this area. But I find that this mask takes a lot. It takes a lot. And I'm trying to learn that if I don't tend to the other side of it, because the other side is, jumping ahead. If I tend to the other side, it will take everything. And I don't want to be someone that says, when I have this mask on, I'm a person of value. I want to be a person of value to myself and to other people,
Yeah. Ooh-wee. Yeah. I mean, without a doubt. Let's jump into the back. I feel it already is. I feel it already is coming, and I feel like oh man, I debated on the third word, and it's still trying to come to me. So I'm going to read the first 2, and I think it's coming. It's coming as I'm in here. So the 2 that I have right now are worry and pride. And when I say pride, like I have a hard time showing that I'm proud of myself. I think like thinking about I only realized literally, I mean, I probably have thought about it over the time, but literally only in the last 2 weeks did I realize that we're about to hit a 20th anniversary. Like I have worked so hard over these last 20 years. Like sometimes I was watching a podcast that I did with one of my former administrators who we were teacher colleagues, and then she became my principal, and then she went off to her own school. And I remember just like answering this question, like the amount of times that I asked myself, what are you thinking? Why are you doing this? What possessed you to take this kind of job where you're barely going to be able to make a living? Not like that wasn't my plan. It wasn't my plan to like barely get by. I had worked really hard. I sacrificed fun and parties growing up because I was like, I'm going to college. I'm gonna be rich. I'm gonna live a great lifestyle financially. I wasn't thinking about a purpose lifestyle. When I was growing up poor, I wasn't thinking about living a life of purpose. I was like thinking a life of money. And I think as I think back to like the last 20 years, if you were to measure my curve of joy around my financial well-being, it's probably a very low curve. If you're talking about my joy about the work I get to do, it's at the top of the charts because I'm so glad every day I get up to get to do this work. And I wish, and along the journey, as I look back, I'm like, wow, I wish those lines kind of matched up a little bit more. I wish my pride in myself. I was never proud of myself. Like when I left engineering to become a teacher, I was never proud in my ability to hang out with my friends because all the places they wanted to go eat was not in my budget. You know, the places they want, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, I'll meet y'all at the bar. I'm not eating there. And I'll make up some lie, you know, I don't like that kind of food or whatever. And it was just like, I went to the website, looked at the menu. I'm like, oh, there's no way. I would be sitting there stressing. So I'd rather just meet you later. I'll have a beverage, right? But I think those journeys of like life has been finding the ways, and now I'm doing more of it. You know what the last word is? I already got it. The last word is failure. I have a fear of failure, but I have a hard time showing failure. I have a hard time talking about failure, and I failed a lot. Stuff falls apart a lot.
Yeah.
And you encouraged me last week when you read that letter on social media, and I was like, wow. I felt sad in the sense that you didn't get the thing that you were going after, but I was like, wow, he shared that. Like I always like err toward the side of my own fear of like what people are going to think, and which causes me to not to post stuff that I record because I'm like always thinking, I'm always worrying about other people. And I think I'm in this new season of my life where I'm like, hey, tomorrow's not promised. And so these are the three: worry, pride, proud of myself, and failure.
I think and I really genuinely appreciate you sharing that, because I think one of the things that really frustrates me about not only my experience as a person, but just social media and stuff is that it's very much like the wins. And I know that wins are important, but failures are a part of growth, right? And I think because we don't normalize failure, that a lot of people are afraid to take risks, or a lot of people will shut down or quit when they fail. I struggle a lot with it. And that was a moment of like, I realized with myself that if I'm going to continue putting myself out there, I've been very lucky to have myself lifted up. I've been very supported. I have rarely gotten trolls on the internet, which is wild to me. Like one time someone said something that was like anti my work, and then somebody questioned them and they were like, it's not about him, it's about me. And in my head, I was like, no, make it about me, because I need to have like negative feedback sometimes, because I'm so afraid, because when you only get positive feedback, it makes the fear of failure even bigger. So I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think if I'm going to talk to kids about growth, I have to talk to them about that. I have to, and to talk about the process of sitting in it and what it feels like, and to allow yourself to feel disappointment and grieve it a little bit is tough. But I read that video and then I've had to watch it like 40 times, because that was one micro moment for me. And I just had this like, I should make a video about this, but I go through that all the time. And a lot of times I don't follow through. I was just talking about my Twitch channel the other day. I have 127 Twitch clips that I have not posted. 127. And I'm just like, nope, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. And so when I was listening to you talk, I also think about something that's helped me as a man of color really kind of be kinder to myself, is understanding that it's not just me that's putting that pressure on me. And when you are, what I've experienced is being a Black man who does exceptional work, it almost feels like you don't have the space to mess up, right? Because people are putting you on this pedestal. So, you know, before I left teaching, I was going to go home. I was like, this is my plan. I'm going to go home. I'm going to make a YouTube channel as like a 33-year-old. I'm going to live in my mom's basement. I'm going to try to make it work. But the whole point was to grow and to not have that pressure. And then the Today Show found me, and Hoda's like, this is the next Mr. Rogers. And everyone's like, this is it. You're it. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, now I can't post anything. So I had this huge like fear that put up a ton of walls. I stopped growing on social media because I stopped posting because I was so anxious about it's not good enough and people are going to judge me. I can get a video that will have 7,000 views and I'm like, it's not 1 million. Why don't people like me? I'm not doing what they like. And that played deeply into the things that are on the back of my mask, which I've been dealing with since I was a kid, and it's hard to tell the difference between professional and personal. But just like we were talking about earlier, how you feel determines how you show up in the classroom. How I feel determines how I show up as a professional. And so I have to constantly kind of remind myself. But when you were sharing and being vulnerable right now, I was so grateful that that's the word that you came to, because my 3 words kind of lead to that. It's just failure. Is like, you can't mess up. You have to be good. And that has played so deeply into my personal and my professional life. So you sharing that is exactly the power of vulnerability, because I never would have expected that from you. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Man. Now's your turn.
All right. This one's tough because I'm going to be super honest. I was just talking about this recently. I think my surface level is a little bit deeper than most people when it comes to being emotionally vulnerable. So people will be like, oh my God, you're so vulnerable. You'll tell anybody anything. And I'm like, you think so? Because I can talk about things like the deaths in my life. I could talk about my substance abuse. I could talk about, being suicidal in college. I could talk about all those things. But then there's these deeper things that have come from it that are so deeply affecting me right now. And I'm just constantly trying to manage these 3 words because they're directly affecting not just like how Donofriend is showing up, it's affecting how Donovan is showing up. So what's interesting is I wrote Donofriend on the front, but on the back I wrote Donovan. And when I post my stuff online, people use a lot of absolute statements, and it's hard when I am the work. I am not the work, but in today's society, exceptionalism and individualism is so big, where it's like this person is this person is this. Donofriend represents the work, and Donovan is separate. I have core values and strengths that kind of cross over. So, things like gratitude and love and kindness, they show up in both my personal and my professional life. But I struggle so deeply with things that Donofriend is helping kids with. And sometimes the back of my mask, I feel like this is just how I'm going to be forever. And I'm in this moment right now where I can't, I don't want to hide these things because it's leading to loss of myself. And I can't be Donofriend without Donovan. I can be Donovan without Donofriend, but it's not the other way around. I cannot be Donofriend if Donovan is not there. And I am feeling that so much. So the words that I wrote fear, loneliness, and self-doubt. And I think what's been hard for me in these past couple of years is that I'm sitting with that mask the most. Because I don't get to be Donofriend. I don't get to be Donofriend anymore. When I was teaching in school or when I was in after school programs, it was like every day I got to feel that, and it fed my motivation and it fed my energy. But right now I have such few opportunities to be Donofriend with kids or with people that I feel very empty a lot of the time. I think fear is in so many ways like one of my most dominant emotions when I'm not on. I think I feel like in the past 3 years since the Today Show, I have been living in almost a constant state of fear because it's easy to say, well, the world pushed me down and they didn't want to take these opportunities and no one wanted to listen to me and it's not my fault. But in reality, that's not been my experience. Like, I have been so lucky and fortunate to be on the Today Show and now this news and to have all these companies reaching out. Like, Every speaking gig I've gotten, none of them have been from outreach. I have not gotten a gig yet to this day that I specifically reached out and said, I want to work with you. Everything that's come from the past 3 years has been someone who's seen my video and reached out to me. And it adds this pressure of this idea of I have to be good, of like, what if I don't get there? And everyone says you had every opportunity and you blew it, right? And so the ultimate joke is that you messed up. But what hurts me is that it's not about proving to people that I can do it or that this work matters. The proof is the kids who I talk to, who are in college or outside of college now, who I knew when they were, 7 or 8, who I've been working with for years. They're the proof. But the fear is not just a professional thing. It's, I dealt with a lot of death when I was a kid, and I started falling into this type of like role of I have to make people feel better. And even in moments where I should have been grieving or I needed support, like I was put on that. Like, you're the person that needs to speak for everyone. You need to sit in mom's lap at dad's funeral. You need to speak at Dewey's, my best friend's funeral, instead of his friends because you're so good at it. And so I never felt like I got to have what I provided for people in those very tough moments. And the fear affects me now. It's, I'm 33 and I am terrified of relationships. And because I'm so afraid that if I love someone, that they'll really see me, that they'll say, oh, you're not that good, right? You're actually kind of a mess, because Donovan feels like I'm on auto mode all the time, right? I work out, which is great, but it's like, that's the one thing I will say. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to work out, but everything else is like, I'm just surviving, and Donofriend is thriving. And so sometimes it feels like Donofriend is siphoning from that. But right now I'm at this moment in my life where Donofriend is at stake if I don't take care of Donovan. And that's really, really hard for me. It's something that I'm struggling with a lot right now is, and I think I've always struggled with it, is just being lonely. And I have so many friends and students and family that love me. But because of all the trauma that I had as a young person, having 5 major deaths before I was 18, all men, right? I've never allowed myself to be vulnerable with someone because of that fear of they're going to die or I'm going to lose them. And I'd rather not face that because it hurts too much. But right now, I am constantly, which feeds into the last one, just self-doubt. I'm constantly beating myself up. I'm not good enough. I'm not doing enough. Why don't I finish things? Everyone can see that you're going to mess up. And because I don't have a team, I can't afford a team right now to sit with me and unpack those things. I feel so lonely. And then now I'm 33. I just saw, I would say 95% of my friends get married. I officiated 5 weddings. Right. I was in like 4 extra weddings. Everyone's like, you don't have a date. You could just officiate. And I'm watching all these people have this support. And I'm, for the first time in my life, starting to say, why have I not allowed myself to have that? And it comes into that fear aspect and this doubt of that if I really show myself to people, if I really truly show myself, including what I'm doing right now, they're going to take their love away from me. They're gonna leave. They're gonna leave. It started with my dad, and it goes up to even these experiences I've had in the past 3 years. When the Today Show happened, there was a lot of attention, and there was a lot of people reaching out, and there was a lot of big names being like, "We got your back." And then I didn't move fast enough, and then suddenly nobody's around. Right? Suddenly it's like everyone's moved on, and that feeds right into this: like, you messed up, you missed your shot. I had agents literally tell me that I missed my shot. Like, they're like, 2 years ago, bro. Yeah, you're done. Right. People I'm going to say I want to work with you are saying you're not good enough, or how could your work be so important and you're so bad on social media? And so they were feeding into the things I already thought about myself. And it hurts because I don't want to get to 45 and be like, look at all the good I did and look at the lack of good I have, like, and I want love, and I want a team, and I don't want to have to shoulder this burden, but it's hard. I don't know how to lean into these things. I don't know how to deal with the fear for, it's almost not even other people, but like, how do I face myself if I don't finish, if I don't follow through after every opportunity I've been given, after all these people who have stuck their neck out or their resources, like what would it feel like for me to not make it, like to really mess up? And it terrifies me. It makes me so scared. And then I don't have people to talk to about it. And then I'll tell my friends or my family, I'll try, and we believe in you. You got this. You're meant for this. You're perfect. And I'm like, God, that doesn't help. And I think a lot about kids, when I talk to kids, I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I try to offer to adults is when kids are struggling, if you tell them they're perfect and they're amazing and there's nothing wrong with them, that creates this huge disconnect for them. Because sometimes I don't need someone to say, you're great, you got this, right? There is no other plan for me besides the elephants, but I don't even know how I'm going to do that. There is no other plan for me. Sometimes I just want someone to sit with me and say, I know you're scared, right? And no one, and I never had that when I was a kid, and I don't have it now. And I think because I've been doing so much work on loving myself and healing myself, I'm hyper aware of it, of like, look at what, only showing that front mask, look at where that's gotten you. But I don't know, man. I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know. And it's like, I just got off of, I was talking to my production team. I'm working with a production company, and we're talking about a branded documentary we're going to do. And I get off the email link with them. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't going to work. You're going to mess up. Everyone's going to laugh at you. And I'm like, bro, what is happening? But it's just, I think, and I know I'm on a tangent, but working with adults, sometimes people are working with kids. Sometimes adults will say, well, I don't understand how you can work with kids, but to do this work, it's so much easier to intercept it at an earlier age versus working with someone who's been living in this pattern for so long. Like, and that's how I feel. So I used to think, well, it doesn't matter how I feel. I just have to do this work, but I don't want that for myself. I don't want that. I want the full experience for myself,
Yeah. Donovan, I see you.
I'm like I'm picking at my fingers so hard right now because I'm so anxious, because it's like, don't show,
I see you, brother. And I know you're scared. And I'm here for you. So in this journey, whenever you're like, who do I talk to about it? I don't have a team.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on the team. I'm on the team.
When we said in the beginning, that's why I mean what I said, because even that, like, look what I was able to do from the small amount of time that we were able to work together. Like, just having that support and just having someone in my corner who gets it, who truly gets it, like, I was able to do so much. And I think that one of the things that makes me sad about, especially boys, is that this lie that we've been fed, this kind of capitalist lie of you got to do it by yourself. It's not fair. It's not fair, because some people are wired that way, and kudos to them. If I was a shark, if I was my brother Joe, who, if he says I'm going to do something, the next day he's got a 42-point plan. The next week he's on point 28, right? If I was like him, I would be unstoppable. But I'm not. I'm a people person. I need people. And, and I've been so mean to myself I just posted a story about it today. Is like, my expectations are so high that I don't even realize that it's not doable. And so because I don't realize it's not doable, I just beat myself up about it. Right.
Yeah. I have a question. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course.
So let's say you were talking to one of your young people, and they were telling you about, like, there was one of their friends who was like super negative, like super in their life, like super, like, just like hurting them, like emotionally, not physically, but emotionally. Like, if you had that student in front of you, what would you say to them? What words of encouragement would you give them about what to do with that friend, or how to begin reprocessing what they need, what they could possibly do, or how to rethink support, how they let that friend in their life?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting question. I think it's a little bit tough because the first response is, well, leave and you deserve better and you need to take care of yourself. But I also realize, especially with kids, like they need friendship and it's hard for them to leave what they perceive to be safety and love and care. And I also understand that a lot of people are trying to take care of themselves. That's really what I think everyone is trying to do, but we do it in ways that either harm ourselves or harm other people. I have been a negative friend. I've been an awful friend. I've lied, I've stolen, right? I've manipulated, I've done all sorts of things as a young person. And I think for me, like talking to young people, it's understanding that a lot of people just don't know. They don't know how to do better. And so that's why I'm really big on teaching kids about boundaries and communicating their needs and their wants. And when people don't respect those boundaries, how it feels to step away from that because you deserve more. It's hard. It's hard because I want them to take care of themselves, but I know that need. I know that need because I deal with it in my romantic life, right? Like if Donofriend looked at me in my romantic life and the way I treat my body or the way I treat myself, it would be like, dude, cut it out, right? Like nothing that you were teaching aligns with that. But I don't know, because of the trauma that I went through as a young person, because of the abandonment and the grief and the ACEs that I experienced as a young person, my brain was wired in a way that, the first time someone told me that they loved me, the first time I had a healthy relationship, I moved across the country to get away from them because I was so scared. And in my head, I was like, oh, it just happened out this way. And 7 years later, I was able to say I didn't even know. I wasn't even aware that that's why I was drawn to them, or that's why I was, running. That's why I felt this gut feeling, or that's why I chased people I couldn't have, is because I knew if I didn't have someone, I couldn't really lose them, Yeah. But I think, and if a kid was talking to me about that, I would share all of that with them, because I think that I wish that we had more transparent conversations with how we think and how we feel and how we unpack things, because young people, I think we often have very prescriptive messages for them. But to just say, this is a tough thing and this is a multifaceted thing, and I can understand why you would want to stay, right? But also like let's talk about it. I mean, the question that saved my life was, if a student was suffering the way you were suffering, what would you tell them? And so when you started asking me that, I was like, if you ask me that question, I'm going to lose my mind, because that's the question that started my whole self-love journey. But that's even a even better question, because for me, my answer demonstrates kind of how I try to approach working with young people, to say, I don't have the answers and this is tough, and I will sit with you and walk through these things, and I will treat you the way, if I can show kids how they deserve to be treated.
Yeah.
At least they have an example of it, right? That's my one thing, is because I don't know what kids have in their friendships. I don't know what they have in their home lives. But if my kids can say, there's one person that treats me with respect, there's one person, and I know how I feel, right? Then maybe that's evidence for them that they can seek those relationships out, but then to sit with them and talk about it, so they don't have to process it by themselves, right? So it can be more of a struggle to figure out what I deserve and what I should have in my life, versus suffering around only responding to these subconscious deep things of run or stay with the hurt or stay with the toxic, right?
Yeah. Well, I think you as a fellow educator, you read through my question and you came back to it. So you knew probably what I was doing. You sensed it. You sensed it. And you caught on. So I don't need to say the other sentence, right?
I mean, honestly, I would love to hear you say the other sentence, because I don't know how it was being framed around myself, honestly. Yeah. I've never had anyone, I don't know what that scenario has to do with me and myself. So I'd love to hear from you where you actually were thinking around that.
Yeah. You said your mean friend said to you, you missed your shot. Your mean friend said, you're not that good. Your mean friend said, yeah, you can't really do this. And there were things that you were saying to yourself that Donovan was saying that was getting in the way of this dream.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I heard that you were saying to yourself, the messages you were telling yourself, what I was hearing, and I was like, well, what if that's why I asked you, because I know that sometimes we miss our own best medicine.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
You have incredible medicine of love and empathy and kindness and respect. And sometimes we're so mean to ourselves. I think you said I've been mean. I've been so I forgot I tried to write it, but I was like, where was it at? But you said beating myself up. There it is. Beating myself up. I've been beating myself up. And that's why I phrased it in terms of what would you tell a student?
Well, you want to know what I would tell a student? Literally? Yeah. Hold on one second. I don't want it to unplug. This is why it's wild. My keynote is BYOBF, be your own best friend. That is literally what I'm teaching kids about. And the way that I like how you phrased it is because it also helped me realize, it helped me kind of take the poison out of those actions and ask myself, why am I doing that? And the reason that I'm doing that is that I'm trying to protect myself. I'm trying to protect myself from rejection and abandonment. So to have all these people online say, I love you. I mean, I'll talk to someone once and they're like, you're my new favorite person. I love you. And I'm like, you don't know me. You don't know me. You love the work I'm doing. And so I get so anxious and I know what it feels like to lose love. And I'm so afraid of love being taken away from me that I'm not willing. So I'd rather try to scare myself out of the dream so I can avoid it than actually put myself out there. But I have a bigger fear now of not seeing the life I've worked for, to not allowing myself to see it and not allowing myself to thrive the way that I know I can. So it gets very conflicting because I know I'm trying to take care of myself, but I don't want to just survive. That's the way that I've been taking care of myself for years, has been about survival. And that's so much with kids. I don't want kids to just survive. I want them to thrive, right? You can survive with an education, right? But that's why you have all these adults who are struggling and doing inner child work and stuff like that, is because they're not thriving. They're unhappy in their jobs. They're unhappy in their relationships. The most common thing is that they're just mean to themselves. They're so tough on themselves, or they're mean to other people, right? Because they can't deal with it. And so for me, I don't want kids to just survive. I need them to thrive, because thriving also builds more humanity in people, and it allows them to connect with pieces of themselves that become more altruistic. The work on its own, I had a person say that this work wasn't important because kids are so self-indulgent already, and all they care about is how they look and how other people see them. But what I'm trying to explain is that this work is not for other people to see them. It's for them to see themselves. Yeah. Right. I've never met a person who is truly thriving who hurts and harms other people. I just haven't. And I think the people who do that are people who genuinely have disorders, right? Like those, when you think about like sociopaths or narcissists and stuff like that, like those things make sense. But for the most part, people who are awful to other people, or people who are so negative, it's them trying to take care of themselves, right? I'll reject you before you can reject me.
I thank you. First of all, let me just stay there. Thank you. I believe that what I'm inspired by you and the work that you're doing, and the work that you're doing on self. There's this song I just recently heard called "The Work" by this guy Rob Ricardo. The Work, and in the lyrics he talks about, I go to battle with my fears and my ego, and I realize I go to battle with my doubts. I wage a war with my ego. I tried to feed the good and starve the evil. Mm-hmm. All the things that I fought before seem to come right back and ask for more. And then the chorus says, I won't run away. I want to run away from them. I can't hide from all the things that live within. So I'll rise above the fear and let them in. It's going to hurt, but that's the work. It's going to hurt, but that's the work.
Yeah.
And I'm in this work too, brother. I would have hoped that by now I would have been. I've already figured out it all.
Yeah.
Like I think I'm smart enough. I'm smart enough to figure these things out. And it's not the intelligence; it is the heart being willing to see it new.
Yeah. And
I'm.
How important is it for us to show young people that we can always learn? I mean, how lucky, especially somebody who has lost as many people that I've lost. How lucky am I to have another day to learn something new about myself and to grow? And if I want to teach kids about growth mindset, that means until the day I die, I want to learn about the world. I want to learn about myself. And to put yourself in that learning position and to be open about it is really vulnerable. And that's so much of what I get from your work and the teachers and the educators and the youth development workers and the parents and the sisters and the siblings and the guardians and the grandparents and the neighbors who are taking care of young people and helping them do that. It is not just me that's doing this. It's not just you that's doing this. It is what the work is. And so for me to come off to these kids and say, I know I have all the answers, when in reality, I'm still learning. But what I found is that kids and people learn more when we're learning together. The whole education system is centered around, we know the answers. We're trying to get you to know the answers. And my thing is like, hey, we're on a big floating piece of rock and we're trying to figure out who we are and what love is and what safety is. And I'm right there with you. You know what I mean? I mean, my kids have taught me, my students have taught me more than any school has ever taught me. My kids, the learning that they've had about themselves, their growth, their struggles, their pain has taught me so much about myself. To be able to sit with a young person who's being vulnerable and to tell them, you're helping me learn, and to let them know that they're not alone is huge. It's huge. It's an honor to witness young people and to hold space for them, because in return, they're holding space for me. And sometimes I tell them, and sometimes I get off the call and I sob for 20 minutes, or, I got to go work out for 2 hours because I don't know what's coming up in me. But, I know I'm in this season for a reason. And I hate that rhymed because I did not mean for it to. But it's true. I know that everything that I'm learning right now is preparing me for all the things I have no idea are coming my way.
Yeah.
I have to learn these, and they're on their way.
Yeah, they're on the way.
They're on their way. I mean, like I said, I asked for you and you showed up, right?
Man, I'm so glad you did. Sometime in this work, because you're just kind of going forward all the time, if you wonder if it's working. And so I wanted you to know that I'll never forget that workshop that day. I'll never forget talking to those students at those tables.
Yeah.
I'll never forget seeing the posters on the walls and having reflection about what we saw at that school. And I'm glad that I didn't know that it was offering you what it was doing. I just was glad to have you there. And so just so you know, I see you and I appreciate you. I'm thankful for you.
Until that day, I have not met anyone that showed me what my work could look like. I've never, and I took some classes and they were like, name your 5 favorite speakers. And I was like, nobody. And they were like, you have to like someone. And I was like, no, I don't watch other speakers. What am I going to learn from them? I don't care. I don't want to replicate what they're doing. But when I worked with you, it was like the first time in my life that my vision was validated, that this is a possible thing that can happen. And you weren't trying to be like, well, here, and do this and do this and do this. You were just influencing me. That's what the work is about. You weren't manipulating me to get to do what you were doing, right? And I know manipulate is a tough word, but in reality, that's what a lot of teaching is I have the answers. I want you to do it this way. I'm going to coach you or trick you or teach you into doing it. And what works for me and what I think works for a lot of kids is influence. I had a kid message me and say, that I was proof that you could like have your dreams come true, because they were one of the kids in my class who I told my dream to. And then when the Today Show thing happened, they were like, you're doing it. And I was so grateful. And then he told me, he was like, you're proof, you're evidence for me that if you can stick to something and you can actually follow through. And I've never said that line to kids because I feel so weird about this. You could do anything you want to do. I just feel so stressed about that saying with young people. Because if a kid's like, I want to fight the sun, like I don't know how you're going to do that, bro. If you say I want to be the Queen of England, I don't know if you can do that. So I struggle with those kinds of conversations. But that's what he took. If I ask kids, what do you remember from my class? Most of the time, they don't tell me my lesson plans, right? But they'll be like, be nice to myself, or they'll remember that I deserve better, right? Or that I need to set boundaries. And I'm like, when did I say this? I don't. Sometimes it stresses me out because I'm like, am I actually teaching anything? But it's a choice and it's an offer. So every time I do a presentation, I tell them, I don't have all the answers. I'm going to present you with some options today. I'm going to show you something. And if it resonates with you, take it. And if it doesn't, leave it. And I still respect you and I still care about you no matter what. And I still wish you the best. And if you find another way that works for you, teach it to other people because we need as many ways as possible.
Oh, man.
For as many people as there are on this planet, there is not a prescription answer. But people are like, this is the number one way to build motivation. I'm like, shut up. Shut up. I'm not listening to some 30-year-old white guy from New York who's a fitness influencer. I'm not listening to you, bro.
Well, I'm gonna tell you later a story about a story that a kid told me about his big mismemory in my class. I'm gonna save it for our next conversation. So we have to have another conversation soon. Come
on, man. We need to do a podcast together.
I think we should. I should have known we weren't going to be out of here in 45 minutes.
You're good, bro. You're good.
I want to tell you, I so appreciate you. We could make it a double, but I'm thankful for you making time today. And this is just a continuance of the beginning. This is not a goodbye. I want to thank you, and I want you to know, if you don't know yet, but I'm cheering you on. Like, I'm inspired by you. I am. You've inspired me 2 stories that I'm going to be telling this week. This one about this student and this other one of a failure. So I think I appreciate you for just continuing to do the work. And that song. I'm hoping I'm gonna send you the link to that song so you can grab it. But I want, if it can serve you in moments of just like, okay, this is the work. I'm in a battle with my doubts. I'm in a battle with my ego. This is the work. It's gonna hurt, but I'm gonna keep going forward, and we can do this. And so
I gotta tell you this really quick. I'm just laughing because it's like you're Mr. Donovaning me, and I get it. It feels so nice. And like I can send you videos of me saying the exact same things to my kids, right? And now you're doing it to me. You're like, I'm learning from you, and I'm inspired by you, and here's what I would offer to you. And I'm like, God, it's so nice.
Oh man,
I'm so grateful for you. I'm truly honored to be sharing this space with you and this work in this world and everything. And I know, and I hear you, and I'm doing the work to really let it in. But it doesn't feel difficult to let it in. It feels a little resistant, but it doesn't feel difficult.
Right on. Well, listen, how about you tell folks how they get in touch with you? Where can they follow you? For those who haven't heard of you, and I know most of them have, because how amazing you are. But for those who haven't, we'll put it all in the show notes, and we're gonna have you on the show again. This is I'm already clear that this episode is our 3rd anniversary episode, and I just want you to know I am thankful for you, and I was going to keep making it a secret, but it's only 2 weeks away. So it's like, I can't really, you're going to get an email in 2 days saying here's, so it was like, okay, I'm going to just tell you right now. But I want you to know.
How great is that? I mean,
thank you.
Well, I am a certified F+ celebrity, right? I got a little bit of credibility, and people will say, no, you're not. And I own it because I got a ways to go. And I'm excited for the ride. But I am on Instagram. I am on TikTok. I don't dance on TikTok unless you go all the way to the bottom of my page. And there's one video. On YouTube right now, no one else in the world that I have found is using the name Donofriend. So if you type Donofriend into Google, everything will come up. But on my website, DonovanTaylorHall.com, there's information about coaching. I work with kids individually. I'm also looking to build out a school tour for next year. So I come in, I also work with youth development workers, parents, anyone who is interested in youth development. And I am also on Instagram. Everything is Donofriend. Just look for big curly hair, an emotional guy, and you got it. That's me.
You won't miss them.
Can I show you my shirt really quick before you end?
Please do.
So it says, it's backwards. It says the way you speak to yourself matters. And one of the main skills I teach kids is self-talk. And I was at this conference that I was volunteered presented at. And I run into this, I got to tell you this because this is so hilarious. I run into this amazing little booth, and they're selling these shirts and the art, and every single shirt is like pulled from my video. Like everything is like, I was like, this has to be my brand, right? So I was like, hey, listen, I've got like a little bit of an audience. I've got like 80,000 followers on TikTok. I'd love to like help lift your business up, because they were these two really humble, cool. I was like, oh, they started this together, like mom and pop shop. Like it would be so cool if I could introduce people to them. So they're like, yeah, we'd love to connect and follow. They follow me on Instagram. They have 1 million followers. And they did not, and they let me sit here and be like, well, I've got a little bit of pull. I'd love to support you. And they're like, we'd love that. Sweetie. It's called Self-Care for Everyone. So I just wanted to throw that out there, because we were talking about it the whole time, and I put it on for this, but you can't see it because it's too short. So I had to do it. I had to shout out. And if I mess their name up, I'm going to literally shave my eyebrows off.
No, you can send it. We'll put it in the show notes correctly. No worries. Okay. The way you speak to yourself matters. Yes. That's it. That's the episode. The episode, right? Donovan, the way you speak to yourself matters.
Yeah, that's true. I like myself. I love myself. I forgive myself. I trust myself. I support myself. I believe in myself.
I believe in you too, brother.
I believe in you. You keep going, man.
Hey, folks, Donovan and I, we shed our masks here publicly, but you don't have to do it publicly. You can go to the website millionmasks.org, make a mask anonymously, and maybe after you make it anonymously, you'll find a friend and ask them, hey, can we talk about this together? There's more to you than anybody can see by looking at you. Donovan, I see you, and there's more to you than I can even see. So thank you for sharing a little bit more of yourself today with us. Thank you for all you do for kids around the world, around your community. I love you, brother.
I love you,
proud
man.
of you.
Thank you so much.
Folks, we'll see you next time. Thanks for being a part of the show today. Bye-bye. The Taking Off the Mask podcast is produced by Ryan Louie and graphics by Kelly Wong. Guests are managed by Dan Paloma, and the podcast is edited by Samuel Matingo. We'd like to thank everyone who's been a part of the creation of this podcast, and for every guest that has been a part of the show, you are now a part of the Taking Off the Mask family. The Taking Off the Mask podcast is brought to you by the Ever Forward Club, and if you like what you've heard today, please subscribe, write a 5-star review, and share this with someone. We look forward to having more conversations that matter. And please remember, there's more to you than anybody can see by just looking at you.